significant relationship with growth, and the unproductive and other expenditure should not be significant. But in reality, I don't know how Professor Barrow and Professor Bliney, he did a study. He did it because when I actually try to get the data on the fiscal data for the ASEAN 5+3 country, the data classification based on the GFS IMF database is not classified in the functional classification based on the peer study, but it's classified into two different, each country has a different classification. For example, China, they have tax on commercial tax, value added, operation tax, tariff. So I have basically I have to regroup into the functional classification to be able to get at the distortionary tax, non-distortionary tax, and so on, productive expenditure. So this is China and Japan. So you can see that, for example, Japan, the classification is different from how the previous study did the classification. And the non-fiscal variable that I use in the model are domestic investment to GDP, labor force growth. These are the two variables that were used in the Professor Bliney paper. But I also include other variables because I think in Asia, in ASEAN +3, the major non-fiscal variable that would have impact on growth would be the export-import to GDP as a proxy for trade openness, school enrollment ratio as a proxy for human capital, and also include the dummy variable for taking the effect of 1997 Asian financial crisis. But of course, there are problems with the data limitation. Just to give you one example, this is the data that I got from the UN data in the school enrollment ratio for the secondary and tertiary enrollment ratio. The number in the highlighted number are the number that I have to estimate on my own. The number in the white boxes are the actual number that I got from the data. So the school enrollment data, particularly for China, I have to make a lot of estimation for the school enrollment ratio. But the data description for ASEAN, relatively ASEAN here, we have a relatively small size of government, about 15% of GDP. I add the productive expenditure and non-productive expenditure. You can see 9%, the mean for the ASEAN +3, the productive expenditure 9.2 and non-productive about 6. So we have relatively small size of government compared to the OECD that the OECD country, the size of government is a lot bigger. I believe 27% of GDP for OECD. And another characteristic of the ASEAN +3 is the fiscal prudence. On the average, ASEAN +3 run budget surplus, 0.5% of GDP. So BS to GDP budget surplus is a positive 0.56. And we have a high level of domestic investment at about 27.3% of GDP for the ASEAN +3. I say high because compared to the average for the OECD, it was 22, so ASEAN was 27. And the size of government for OECD was over 20, almost 30%. And another characteristic for the ASEAN +3 is the openness to international trade. On average, 105%. For the OECD, And also another characteristic is the high GDP per capita growth at close to 6% of GDP for the ASEAN plus 3 compared to the OECD 2.8% on average, the mean. So these are the methodology. I ran the panel regression. There are three models that we can use: a fixed effect model, random effect, and also the generalized method of moment, GMM, to take the dynamic fixed effect model that deal with the endogeneity problem. I did the Horstman test, and I found that fixed effect model would be more appropriate for my data. So I ran